Hi, rising fifth graders. We are on chapter 4 of PSB 11, and the chapter starts on page 24. It's called Herkimer Street. I felt like a thief trying to steal a good look at my father's face through the rearview mirror. He caught me and winked. For a second, it was like having Uncle Darnell with me. Uncle D, always happy, singing, and still doing the Watusi when that dance had long been gone. I shuddered as a picture flashed before me. Would my father pick up dancing? The last thing I wanted was a father who danced and carried on like he was fresh out of high school. As soon as the shudder passed, another overtook it. The gymnasium in June, the sixth grade dance. The happening no sixth grader could avoid unless her parents forbade her to go. That wasn't likely. All the PTA mothers looked forward to sewing dresses, teaching their sons to do the box step, and giving assemblies on how sixth graders are expected to behave at the dance. For us, it meant bowing, curtsying, dancing, boy-girl with hands touching, sweaty, cookie-crumby hands. I shuddered. For me, the sixth grade dance meant trying to match steps with boys I'd slugged. Boys I'd said, "Your mama," to in the schoolyard because they said it to me first in the Battle of the Dozens. For me, and me alone, it meant waiting to be asked to dance when no one would ask because they'd have to look way up at me. And now I was even taller than when I had left for Oakland. I surely didn't want to be the girl that no one asked to dance. I didn't want to be the girl who swayed by the punch bowl and the cookie table, pretending to enjoy watching everyone else dance. I didn't want to be Miss Merriam-Webster's definition of a sixth grade wallflower. Those thoughts and pictures kept flashing before me. Then Big Ma snorted. I remembered where I was, sitting in the back seat of the Wildcat, awaiting a whipping. Only then did the pictures of the sixth grade dance cloud and fade. June was far, far away. Driving down Atlantic Avenue was almost as good as being home. When I was younger than Fern, I worried that Atlantic Avenue L train above us would come crashing down, train tracks and all. Now I looked up and saw, steel as strong as it was old. I heard and saw the sturdy old L, a train shooting across Brooklyn. The sounds above felt familiar. A few sparks jumped out beneath the train as it roared and rumbled overhead, and I made a wish on those lucky train sparks. We were back in Bed-Stuy. The red brick armory stood in the distance on Bedford and Atlantic Avenues like a fortress, or as Uncle Darnell would tell us, like a princess's castle. The Wildcat turned down Schenectady and again on Herkimer Street. It all looked good and welcoming. St. John's Hospital, Friendship Baptist, our elementary school, the big old softball stadium. We passed by the People's Bank, which was nothing at all like the People's Center in Oakland. We passed by burned-out buildings and weedy-littered vacant lots. Although the neighborhood begged for change, positive change, on every other election billboard after the riots, I was glad to find everything where we had left it. Even neighbors sat on their stoops as if they hadn't moved since we had gone. Herkimer Street. Good old Herkimer Street. I was glad to be home, but I dreaded it all the same. Big Ma wasn't the kind to fall back on a promise, and she had promised me a whipping. I'd have to yelp and cry to satisfy Big Ma that I had learned my lesson. Worst of all, I'd have to put up with Vanetta and Fern's teasing afterwards. Maybe there'd still be some Oakland left in us, and my sisters would show me some solidarity, like when they gathered around me and Fern held my hand at the airport. Pa stopped whistling My Girl. We pulled into our driveway, and when Pa hit the brakes, the Wildcat lurched forward sharply enough to wake the nappers. Among the rows of brown brick homes, all standing together like gingerbread houses surrounded by black spiked iron fencing. I knew our house was odd. Not odd in the way Cecile's green prickly stucco house was odd in Oakland. Our house was odd because of the gingerbread houses stood in their own brown brick solidarity, and our house stood apart, made from brickstone and siding, whatever Pa could turn into a house. With Uncle D's help, he'd nearly built it from scratch. If If anything broke down or needed fixing, he'd sigh and talk about the house like it was some old soul he'd been knowing over the years. He'd tell me how he was barely 20 and could have bought a 2-year-old Thunderbird that ran like the wind, but ended up getting the lot with the burned-out frame of a house at the city auction. He'd tell me, but not Vanetta and Fern, I was thinking of you and your sisters before I knew you'd be born. When we got to the suitcases in the house, Pa put his arms around Big Ma and spoke low in her ear. She pushed him away and saying, "This is the ruin of all things." Pa, who had been sweet, became firm and said, "Ma," not on their first day home. "Ruin," Big Ma said, although clearly Pa had won. Big Ma creaked along into the recesses of the house. She peeled off her hat and wig as she went. "Spare not, spoil not." "Beat not," Vanetta said as soon as Big Ma was safely out of earshot. "Surely not." Chapter 5, page 29. Heckle and Jekyll. "We should let Cecile know we're here," I said. "Back in Brooklyn," Vanetta said. "On Herkimer Street," Fern said. "Too bad she doesn't have a phone," I reminded her sisters. My sisters. "Or a television," Fern said. "Or a deluxe stereo like ours with a record player," Vanetta said. Too bad." Then it came to me, and I rapped my knuckles on top of the largest suitcase. We got something. I pushed open the suitcase latches, while the two of them bounced on Fern's bed and asked, What? I had made a mess of our folded summer clothes until I found it. A Chinatown postcard of a parade dragon from our San Francisco excursion. "We can drop it in the mailbox." "But that's our souvenir," Vanetta protested. "For show and tell." Vanetta's arms folded. "We don't want to send it." Fern also folded her arms. "Surely don't." I didn't entirely blame them. Cecile didn't wrap her arms around us when we first arrived, but when we hugged her goodbye, she hugged us back like she didn't want to let go. That was reason enough to send her our only souvenir, whether Vanetta and Fern liked it or not. "She'll worry about us," I told them. "She will not," Vanetta said. "Yes, she will," Fern decided, and that was all I needed, to have one sister on my side. I would have sent the postcard anyway, but things went better when both thought they had equal say. "You know she'll worry," I told Vanetta. Truthfully, I hoped she'd worry about us. With Cecile, you just didn't know for sure. Vanetta gave in. "Before we send it," I said, "we should work out what we're going to write. How about, 'Dear Cecile'?" I left room for my sisters to join in. "No," Vanetta said, cutting off our rat-a-tat-tat flow before we could get it going. "We should start with 'Dear Mom.'" Fern went tooey. I agreed with Fern's fake spitting. Cecile was our mother, but she wasn't a mom or a mommy. She wasn't even a ma or a mama. Okay. Vanetta was hurt by our rejection, but deep down, she knew Cecile wouldn't like that mom stuff. Mom was a TV mom, and Cecile wasn't like any mom on television. Vanetta cleared her throat as if she were on stage at the Black Panther rally. "How about 'Dear Sister Nazilla'?" "Yeah. 'Dear Sister Nazilla, poet of—'" The people, Fern cried. "'Dear Sister Nazilla, poet to the people.'" "That's good," Vanetta said. "Poet to the people instead of power to the people." Vanetta and Fern were back in the flow of things, but I refused to write. My best handwriting was fine, but large-lettered. I'd never fit all of their heckle and jekyling on the back of our small postcard. Equal say hit a pothole. How could equal say work when there were 3 of us and 1 small postcard? So I did what I always do. I took over. "She knows who she is," I said in Papa's firm voice. "Instead, we'll write 'Dear Cecile,' because that's what we call her. We're back in Brooklyn safe and sound on Herkimer Street. Sincerely, Delphine, Vanetta, and Fern." That says it all, and there's enough room for her address and our return address. "Boring," Vanetta said, adding a yawn to make her point. "It should be, we're back in Brooklyn safe and sound. Not in the lost and found," Fern added. Heckle rolled her eyes and shook her head. "It's safe and sound on the ground." Then it was Jekyll's turn to yawn and say, "Boring. Lost and found is better than safe and sound." Ever since the Black Panther rally, Fern was becoming a regular word-stir, finding rhymes and sound-alikes every chance she got. Miss Merriam-Webster would have been proud. "But we weren't lost," Vanetta argued. But Big Ma found us. Nuh-uh, we found her. Then Delphine knocked that white man down. I didn't knock that man down, I said. I bumped into him by accident, and his newspaper flew out of his hands. Fern's eyes became big. We should say, and Big Ma slapped Delphine. No, we shouldn't, I said. We surely should, Fern said. Finally, we agreed to keep our postcard to our mother simple. No rhyming, no telling about the white man in the newspaper in the airport. No telling our scary, crazy mother about Big Ma's quick right hand. And to myself, I said, no telling about finding a brand new Pa who whistled Temptation songs and smelled like a Christmas tree. Heckle and Jekyll hadn't noticed anything new about Pa. They were just glad to sugar him up. I wrote, Dear Cecile, we are back in Brooklyn safe and sound. We miss you. From Delphine, Vanetta, and Little Girl. I made the mistake of handing over the pen to let them sign their own names. Vanetta wrote as large as she could. Then Fern decided to go back to Little Girl, the name she wouldn't answer to in Oakland. Jekyll thought that was funny. That is the end of Chapter 5, Heckle and Jekyll, and I will read more later.